Your soulmate is moving on because you stay silent. Don't scroll, stay right here, because this story doesn't begin with betrayal or distance, it begins with quiet, the kind of quiet you thought was safe, the kind you believed was patience, the kind you told yourself was maturity. You stayed silent because you didn't want to ruin the connection. You stayed silent because you believed love should feel calm, not confrontational. And while you were protecting the bond in your own way, something else was happening underneath that silence. Listen to this carefully, because in the beginning, your silence felt noble. You told yourself you were being understanding. You didn't want to pressure them. You didn't want to seem needy or emotional. You believed that if something was meant to last, it wouldn't need to be questioned or explained. So you swallowed words. You delayed conversations. You waited for the right moment that never quite came. Don't skip this part, because silence doesn't look like silence from the inside. Inside, it's loud. Inside, you replay conversations you never had. You imagine how they might react if you spoke up. You rehearse your feelings alone, convincing yourself you'll say something soon, just not today, not now, not when things feel fragile. Stay right here, because while you were staying quiet, your soulmate wasn't standing still. They felt the distance even if they couldn't name it. They sensed something unsaid lingering between you, something heavy in the pauses, something missing in the connection. And without words, they filled the silence with their own interpretations. Don't scroll, your heart needs this right now. Silence leaves space, and space gets filled, not always with truth, but with assumption. They may have assumed you didn't care as deeply. They may have assumed you were unsure. They may have assumed you were already halfway gone. And assumptions slowly change how someone shows up. Listen closely, because you didn't stay silent to manipulate or punish. You stayed silent because you were afraid. Afraid of conflict. Afraid of rejection. Afraid that speaking your truth might be the very thing that pushes them away. So you chose the option that felt safest in the moment, even though it hurt you quietly. Stay with me, because over time, your silence began shaping the dynamic. You became the one who adjusted internally while everything looked fine on the surface. You nodded. You smiled. You reassured. But you didn't reveal. And without revelation, intimacy stalls. Don't skip this, because emotional connection doesn't deepen in silence. It deepens in vulnerability. And when vulnerability is missing, even strong bonds begin to feel shallow, not because love is gone, but because truth isn't flowing. Listen to this carefully, because your soulmate didn't move on suddenly. It happened slowly, in small emotional steps. They stopped checking in as much. They stopped leaning in with the same intensity. They started protecting themselves from the uncertainty they felt but couldn't explain. Stay right here, because from your perspective, nothing dramatic changed. There was no argument. No breakup. Just a gradual shift that left you confused, wondering when things started feeling different. But from their perspective, the silence spoke louder than words ever could. Don't scroll, because silence can be interpreted as indifference, even when it's rooted in fear. When someone reaches emotionally and doesn't feel met, they eventually stop reaching. Not to punish, but to protect themselves. Listen closely, because you may have believed that actions speak louder than words. That your presence, your loyalty, your consistency would be enough. But emotions don't live in actions alone. They need language. They need expression. They need to be named to be understood. Stay with me, because you started noticing the distance only when it was already forming. You felt them pulling back slightly. You sensed a change in energy. And instead of speaking then, you went quieter, hoping closeness would return on its own. Don't skip this part, because this is where silence becomes a pattern. When discomfort appears, you retreat inward. When uncertainty grows, you wait it out. And the longer you wait, the harder it feels to speak, because now the words feel heavier, more urgent, more risky. Listen to this carefully, because your soulmate may have wanted to hear your truth more than perfection. They may have wanted honesty, even if it was messy. But without knowing what was happening inside you, they were left guessing. Stay right here, because unspoken emotions don't disappear. They turn into distance. They turn into misalignment. They turn into two people standing close but feeling far apart. Don't scroll, your heart needs this right now. You may be realizing that staying silent didn't keep the peace, it postponed a conversation that needed to happen. And in that postponement, the connection lost momentum. Listen closely, because this doesn't mean it's too late. It means there's clarity now. It means you can see how silence, even when well-intentioned, can slowly disconnect two people who care about each other deeply. Stay with me, because silence often comes from believing your feelings are too much. But feelings don't fade when ignored. They grow heavier, and that weight eventually affects the bond. Don't skip this, because real connection doesn't require you to be fearless, it requires you to be honest. Vulnerability isn't about saying everything perfectly, it's about letting someone see where you actually stand. Listen to this carefully, because if your soulmate is moving on, it's not because you didn't care, it's because they didn't feel your care clearly. And clarity matters in love. Stay right here, because this moment is an invitation, not a punishment. An invitation to speak. To express. To show up emotionally before silence turns into permanent distance. Don't scroll, because even if this connection doesn't return to what it was, the lesson remains powerful. Your voice matters. Your feelings deserve space. Your truth deserves to be shared, not stored away. Listen closely, because love doesn't survive on assumption. It survives on communication, even imperfect communication. Even difficult communication. Stay with me, because silence protects you from discomfort, but it can also cost you connection. And learning that doesn't make you weak, it makes you wiser. Don't skip this final reflection. If this message feels personal, it's because your heart already knows what needs to be said. Whether to them, or to yourself, or in your next connection, your voice is part of love, not a threat to it. If this resonated with you, take a moment to like this, share it with someone who might need to hear it, and subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. And please, stay till the end of this journey, because speaking your truth can change everything. Don't scroll, stay right here, because after you realize silence played a role, the weight of it starts pressing in ways you didn't expect. It's not loud regret, it's quiet questions that follow you through the day, questions like what would have happened if I had spoken sooner, if I had been braver, if I had trusted that my feelings were allowed to exist. These questions don't come to punish you, they come to wake you up. Listen to this carefully, because silence doesn't disappear just because you finally notice it. It lingers in memories, in moments when you almost said something but chose to smile instead. You replay those moments now, seeing how often you minimized yourself, how often you told yourself it's not that serious, how often you convinced yourself that love should be easy if it's real. Don't skip this part, because the hardest truth isn't that they're moving on, it's that you taught them how to meet you. Not intentionally, not selfishly, but through what you allowed and what you withheld. When you didn't express your needs, they learned not to ask. When you didn't share your doubts, they assumed there were none. Stay right here, because you begin to understand how emotional distance doesn't start with leaving, it starts with not being let in. You were physically present, loyal, consistent, but emotionally guarded in the moments that mattered most. And without emotional access, even strong feelings start to fade into uncertainty. Don't scroll, your heart needs this right now. You may have believed that staying quiet was protecting them, that speaking your truth would burden them or create conflict. But silence doesn't protect connection, it protects avoidance. And avoidance slowly drains intimacy from the bond. Listen closely, because there were signs long before they began moving on. Subtle changes in tone. Shorter responses. Less curiosity about your inner world. These weren't punishments, they were signals. Signals that something felt one-sided, even if neither of you knew how to name it. Stay with me, because when someone doesn't feel emotionally met, they begin pulling back instinctively. Not to hurt you, but to reduce their own vulnerability. They stop leaning in. They stop waiting. They stop risking disappointment. And from the outside, it looks like they're losing interest, but inside, they're protecting themselves. Don't skip this, because you might remember moments when you felt something was off, moments when your intuition nudged you to speak. But fear stepped in. Fear of saying the wrong thing. Fear of changing the dynamic. Fear that honesty might expose cracks you weren't ready to face. Listen to this carefully, because fear doesn't mean you didn't care, it means you cared deeply. You were invested. You didn't want to lose what you had. And that's why you chose silence, believing it was the lesser risk. Stay right here, because silence often feels safer than vulnerability, especially if you've been taught that expressing needs leads to rejection. If your past taught you that honesty costs you connection, your nervous system learned to stay quiet to survive. Don't scroll, because this isn't about blaming yourself. It's about understanding why you did what you did. You weren't weak. You were protecting something you valued. You just didn't realize the cost of that protection. Listen closely, because while you were holding things in, they were filling in the blanks. Humans do that when clarity is missing. They interpret silence through their own fears, their own insecurities, their own past experiences. And often, those interpretations aren't kind to the truth. Stay with me, because you may now see how silence can feel like rejection to the person on the other side. Even if you were present, your unspoken emotions created a wall they couldn't cross. And after trying to cross it quietly, they eventually stopped trying. Don't skip this part, because the distance you feel now didn't appear overnight. It was built slowly, through moments that seemed small at the time. Moments when you said, "It's fine," instead of, "This hurt." Moments when you changed the subject instead of opening your heart. Listen to this carefully, because love doesn't disappear suddenly. It erodes when connection isn't fed. And connection needs expression, not perfection, to survive. Stay right here, because you might be asking yourself why they didn't speak up either. Why they didn't ask what was wrong. Why they didn't push harder. And the answer isn't simple, but it often comes down to energy. When someone feels they're always reaching into silence, they eventually stop reaching. Don't scroll, your heart needs this right now. You may realize that your silence trained the relationship to stay on the surface. Safe conversations. Light moments. Familiar routines. But depth stayed untouched, and depth is where lasting bonds grow. Listen closely, because there's a difference between peace and avoidance. Peace allows truth. Avoidance avoids it. And you mistook one for the other because both feel quiet. Stay with me, because now that you see this, emotions you buried start surfacing. Sadness. Regret. Longing. And these emotions aren't here to overwhelm you, they're here to be acknowledged. Don't skip this, because acknowledging them doesn't mean you failed. It means you're learning. You're expanding beyond the version of you that believed silence was safer than honesty. Listen to this carefully, because you might feel the urge to finally speak now. To explain everything. To pour out all the words you held back. And while expression is important, timing and intention matter too. Stay right here, because this moment isn't about forcing a reaction from them. It's about reclaiming your voice for yourself first. Understanding that your feelings are valid whether they're received or not. Don't scroll, because even if they are already moving on, this lesson stays with you. It teaches you that your voice is part of intimacy. That love doesn't require you to disappear emotionally to keep it. Listen closely, because silence teaches others how to treat you, but speaking teaches you how to respect yourself. Stay with me, because you're beginning to see that vulnerability isn't a threat to love, it's the doorway to it. And when vulnerability is absent, even genuine affection struggles to survive. Don't skip this part, because you might feel grief now. Grief for the conversations you never had. Grief for the closeness that could have deepened. And that grief is real. It deserves compassion, not judgment. Listen to this carefully, because this isn't about turning back time. It's about moving forward differently. About knowing that next time, you won't stay silent to keep connection. You'll speak to build it. Stay right here, because silence was your shield once, but you're strong enough now to lower it. You don't need to hide your truth to be loved. Don't scroll, your heart needs this right now. You're learning that being seen requires being heard, and being heard requires speaking, even when your voice shakes. Listen closely, because this awareness is the turning point. Not just for this connection, but for how you show up in love moving forward. Stay with me, because what feels like loss right now is also growth. Growth into someone who understands that love isn't maintained by quiet endurance, but by honest expression. Don't skip this final reflection. Whether you speak now or later, to them or to someone new, your voice matters. And the more you honor it, the less likely silence will ever cost you connection again. Don't scroll, stay right here, because this is the stage where silence turns into awareness, and awareness turns into responsibility. Not responsibility to fix everything, not responsibility to chase someone who's already pulling away, but responsibility to finally listen to yourself. This is where you stop asking what they're doing and start asking what you've been avoiding inside. Listen to this carefully, because once you understand how silence shaped the connection, you begin noticing how deeply it shaped you too. You see how often you trained yourself to hold back. How quickly you swallowed words the moment you felt tension. How instinctively you chose restraint over expression, believing that love required you to stay composed, contained, manageable. Don't skip this part, because this pattern didn't start here. This connection didn't invent your silence, it revealed it. It showed you how familiar it feels for you to stay quiet in order to stay connected. How natural it feels to minimize your needs so the bond doesn't feel threatened. Stay right here, because when you look honestly, you realize silence once kept you safe. Maybe growing up, speaking up caused conflict. Maybe expressing emotions led to rejection. Maybe you learned early that love was conditional, and staying quiet meant staying included. That lesson stayed with you longer than you realized. Don't scroll, your heart needs this right now. You weren't silent because you didn't care. You were silent because you cared so much that losing the connection felt unbearable. So you adapted. You adjusted. You became easier to stay with, even if it meant being harder on yourself. Listen closely, because your nervous system learned to equate peace with quiet. And now that you're questioning that belief, it feels uncomfortable, almost unsafe. Speaking up feels risky. Vulnerability feels like exposure. And yet, something in you knows staying silent hurts more in the long run. Stay with me, because this is where grief deepens, not grief for them moving on, but grief for how often you abandoned yourself to keep others close. That grief can feel heavy, but it's also honest. It means you're finally seeing yourself clearly. Don't skip this, because clarity changes how you remember the relationship. You stop idealizing it. You stop blaming yourself entirely. You see the truth in layers. You see where you held back, and you see where they stopped reaching. You understand that both can be true at the same time. Listen to this carefully, because this awareness doesn't mean you should run back and confess everything in a rush. It means you pause. You feel. You integrate. You learn to separate your need to be heard from your fear of being alone. Stay right here, because silence didn't just cost you connection, it cost you trust in your own voice. You stopped trusting that what you felt mattered. You questioned whether your emotions were valid. You treated your inner world like something to manage instead of something to honor. Don't scroll, because reclaiming your voice doesn't happen all at once. It happens in small moments. Choosing to name discomfort. Choosing to ask for clarity. Choosing not to say, "It's fine," when it isn't. These choices feel small, but they are transformational. Listen closely, because you begin noticing how different it feels when you imagine speaking honestly. There's fear, yes, but there's also relief. A sense of expansion. A sense of truth wanting to move through you instead of staying trapped inside. Stay with me, because this is the moment you realize something important. Even if your soulmate is moving on, your voice still matters. Expression isn't valuable only when it saves a relationship. It's valuable because it saves you. Don't skip this part, because you may feel the urge to blame timing, circumstances, or missed chances. But deeper than all of that is a simpler truth. You didn't trust that you could be fully yourself and still be loved. And that belief shaped every decision you made. Listen to this carefully, because this belief didn't make you weak. It made you cautious. It made you adaptive. It made you survive. But survival patterns don't always support intimacy. Stay right here, because now you're standing at a crossroads. One path leads back to silence, to hoping someone will understand without you having to explain. The other leads to expression, to risking discomfort for the chance at real connection. And only one of those paths leads to intimacy. Don't scroll, your heart needs this right now. You may notice that even imagining a future where you speak freely feels lighter. Less tense. Less controlled. That's not coincidence. That's your body responding to alignment. Listen closely, because you begin redefining what safety actually means. Safety isn't the absence of conflict. Safety is the presence of honesty without punishment. Safety is knowing you can speak and still be held. Stay with me, because this realization reshapes how you view love. Love isn't about keeping things smooth. It's about allowing things to be real. It's about trusting that the right connection can hold your truth, even when it's messy. Don't skip this, because you may feel anger surface now. Anger at yourself for staying quiet. Anger at them for not noticing. Let that anger pass through. It's part of reclaiming your power. Listen to this carefully, because power doesn't come from control. It comes from authenticity. From knowing that your feelings are valid, whether or not someone is ready to receive them. Stay right here, because you begin practicing honesty in small ways. With friends. With family. With yourself. You stop editing your emotions to fit what you think others want. Don't scroll, because this practice changes you. You feel more grounded. More present. Less fragmented. Your inner world starts matching your outer expression. Listen closely, because you start understanding that silence wasn't love, it was fear disguised as peace. And naming that truth frees you. Stay with me, because even if this connection doesn't come back, something far more important returns to you. Your voice. Your agency. Your self-respect. Don't skip this part, because you're learning that intimacy requires participation. It requires risk. It requires showing up even when the outcome isn't guaranteed. Listen to this carefully, because you can't build closeness by hiding. You can't be fully known if you're not fully expressed. Stay right here, because you may now see how different future connections will be. You won't wait as long to speak. You won't assume understanding. You'll create it through communication. Don't scroll, your heart needs this right now. You're no longer willing to lose connection by staying silent. You'd rather risk honesty than live in quiet regret. Listen closely, because this is the turning point. The moment silence stops being your default and expression becomes your choice. Stay with me, because growth often feels like loss at first. But what you're actually losing is an old version of yourself that believed love required self-erasure. Don't skip this final reflection. Whether or not your soulmate returns, you are becoming someone who won't disappear to keep someone else close. And that transformation will shape every connection that comes next. This chapter isn't ending in silence. It's ending in awareness. And awareness is the beginning of a voice that will no longer go unheard. Don't scroll, stay right here, because this is where everything you've realized starts turning into how you actually live, not in big dramatic declarations, but in quiet, everyday moments where you choose differently than you used to. This is the phase where awareness stops being an idea and starts becoming a behavior, and it feels subtle, but it changes everything. Listen to this carefully, because the first thing you notice is how uncomfortable silence feels now. Not peaceful silence, but the kind where you're holding something back. Your body recognizes it immediately. Your chest tightens. Your thoughts loop. And instead of ignoring it like before, you pause and ask yourself what you're not saying. Don't skip this part, because this is new territory for you. For so long, silence felt like safety. Now it feels like self-betrayal. And that shift is powerful, even if it scares you a little. Stay right here, because you begin practicing honesty in small, low-risk ways. You speak up when something doesn't sit right. You express preferences without apologizing. You admit when you're unsure instead of pretending everything is fine. These moments might seem small, but they rebuild trust with yourself. Don't scroll, your heart needs this right now. You realize that speaking doesn't always lead to rejection like you once feared. Sometimes it leads to understanding. Sometimes it leads to clarity. And sometimes it leads to endings that were already happening quietly anyway. But none of those outcomes are as painful as staying silent and disappearing inside. Listen closely, because you start noticing how different people respond to your voice. Some lean in. Some listen. Some meet you with curiosity. And others pull away. And instead of blaming yourself when someone pulls away, you recognize it as information, not a failure. Stay with me, because this is where discernment grows. You see clearly who has the capacity to hold your truth and who only felt comfortable with the quiet version of you. And that clarity helps you stop chasing validation from places that were never meant to give it. Don't skip this, because you may feel grief again here. Grief for how many times you stayed quiet in the past. Grief for how many connections might have deepened if you'd trusted your voice sooner. Let that grief pass through you. It's not here to trap you, it's here to release you. Listen to this carefully, because regret doesn't mean you failed. It means you learned. And learning changes how you move forward, not how you punish yourself. Stay right here, because your nervous system is adjusting. Speaking your truth still feels vulnerable, but it no longer feels dangerous. The fear doesn't disappear, but it loses control over your choices. You learn that courage doesn't mean feeling safe, it means acting honestly despite the fear. Don't scroll, because this shift affects more than romantic connections. You notice it in friendships, in family dynamics, in work conversations. You stop absorbing discomfort to keep things smooth. You address things earlier, softer, clearer. Listen closely, because you begin to feel more present in your own life. You're not carrying unspoken thoughts everywhere you go. Your mind feels lighter. Your body feels less tense. Expression creates space inside you. Stay with me, because you also begin understanding something important. Speaking your truth doesn't guarantee someone will stay. And that's okay. The right connections don't require silence to survive. Don't skip this part, because this is where self-respect stabilizes. You no longer measure the success of a connection by whether it lasts, but by whether you were honest within it. You stop abandoning yourself to keep others comfortable. Listen to this carefully, because this is how you reclaim power. Not by controlling outcomes, but by controlling your participation. You show up fully or you don't show up at all. Stay right here, because you may notice a quiet confidence growing. You trust yourself more. You trust that even if someone walks away, you'll survive. That trust removes desperation from your voice and replaces it with grounded presence. Don't scroll, your heart needs this right now. You realize that silence once felt like protection, but now honesty feels like freedom. You're no longer hiding parts of yourself to earn love. Listen closely, because you begin recognizing emotional safety by how free you feel to speak, not by how calm things look on the surface. If you can't be honest somewhere, you know it's not alignment. Stay with me, because you start attracting different energy now. People who communicate. People who ask questions. People who don't shut down when things get real. And this doesn't happen because you searched harder, it happens because you changed how you show up. Don't skip this, because you also become more patient in a healthy way. You don't rush conversations, but you don't postpone them endlessly either. You trust timing without using it as an excuse to avoid discomfort. Listen to this carefully, because your voice becomes clearer the more you use it. You don't over-explain as much. You don't justify your feelings endlessly. You state them and allow others to respond as they will. Stay right here, because you understand now that vulnerability isn't about dumping everything at once. It's about consistency. It's about not disappearing when things matter. Don't scroll, because you may notice moments where you're tempted to go quiet again. Old habits don't disappear overnight. When that happens, you don't judge yourself. You gently choose differently. Listen closely, because this is how patterns break. Not through perfection, but through awareness and repetition. Stay with me, because you stop waiting for others to guess what you need. You realize guessing isn't intimacy. Communication is. Don't skip this part, because this is where your sense of self solidifies. You know who you are emotionally. You know what you need. And you trust that those needs are not too much. Listen to this carefully, because you no longer equate love with endurance. You equate it with openness. With dialogue. With mutual effort. Stay right here, because the fear that once kept you silent starts losing its power. You understand now that losing yourself costs more than losing someone else. Don't scroll, your heart needs this right now. You see that even if your soulmate is moving on, you are moving toward yourself. And that movement matters. Listen closely, because this isn't about chasing them back. It's about ensuring you never abandon your voice again, no matter who stands in front of you. Stay with me, because this chapter isn't about regret. It's about responsibility. Responsibility to show up as you are, not as you think you should be. Don't skip this final reflection. Silence once felt safer than honesty, but now you know better. Love that requires you to disappear isn't love that can last. And as you carry this awareness forward, you'll notice something powerful. Your voice won't feel like a risk anymore. It will feel like home. This is how the story changes. Not because someone stayed or left, but because you decided you would no longer stay silent.